Welcome back, guys. We are ready to do our first power rankings of the season for the High Limit Racing Series. These power rankings will be talking about drivers that are just full-time with the series. They are the full-time high rollers. And we're going to be looking at the top 10. We're not going to be going through all 17 positions. Number one, for that reason, number one is because we don't want to sit here all day and talk about all 17 drivers. On the other hand, I don't want to really ruffle any feathers with drivers and things like that if I have them in a spot where they don't think they belong. So those drivers are being tabulated. They're being kept track of from 11th on down. And so maybe you'll see one of them jump into the top 10 at some point throughout this little series we're doing here with the power rankings. So what I want to mention also is the power rankings are not ranked by just where they're at in the point standings. The power rankings are by how I feel the drivers were actually, how they performed throughout the given week or weekend of racing. So, but I will say for the first week or two, due to the very small sample size, most of these guys are going to be close to where they're at in the point standings. But there are a few on the board, as you can maybe tell by reading some of these spots already, that they're not exactly where they are ranked at in the point standings comparatively to where they're at on my power rankings board. And for the first driver, you'll see that he's nowhere near where he should be at as far as the point standings go. So just wanted to mention that it is not, the power rankings are not done by just where they're at in the points. It's how they finish every single race given, in that given time span of when we're looking at it for each particular power rankings. So let's jump right into it. The first driver, 10th right now in the power rankings, and what I will be doing is after every week I'll be saying, moving up 4 spots or going back 2 spots or moving up 7 positions to, 3rd place. I'm going to be doing that, but for week number 1, this is the very first time they've been on the board here. So 10th right now in the power rankings is Justin Peck. So Justin Peck, right now, where he sits at in the high limit point standings with all the drivers, accounted for, he is 14th in points. And in my opinion, it was very, very hard for me to not have Justin Peck up around maybe one of these 2 spots, because in my opinion, he was one of the best cars, maybe the best car at East Bay Raceway Park, but literally has nothing to show for it. The first night, he's running second, tracking down Kyle Larson for the lead, gets into it with a lap car and breaks the front end, does not come back onto the racetrack. Okay, that's a wash. Second race, he goes out. There's the big stack up on lap number 1, and Justin Peck gets involved when he starts mid-pack and literally nowhere to go. The entire field is getting jumbled up, and he goes into the infield. I can't remember if he went to the work area or not, but he went back onto the racetrack and got back up to 12th. So finishes of 26th and 12th for Justin Peck. A terrible start to the season, literally no luck. But in my opinion, one of the best cars at East Bay the entire week. And it was very hard for me to put him down here in 10th, but I had to look at the results. And I mean, bad luck. It's hard to really put that into the power rankings, but I'm going to have Justin Peck at 10th place right now. 9th in the power rankings, I've got Rico Abreu, 9th in the power rankings right now. It was a pretty tough week at East Bay for Rico. I think that maybe I was expecting a little bit too much potentially for Rico. His finishes were 7th and 17th at the 2 nights at East Bay. He is currently 9th in the High Limit Sprint Car Series point standings. Remember, if you remember a couple of videos ago, I did a guess or a prediction of the top 10 in points, and I had Rico winning this championship, and he's off to a pretty rough start. I know 7th is pretty good, but when you account for the fact that he started 5th, he went back 2 positions to 7th, and thinking that this guy is a championship contender, losing positions is not something that I would have thought was going to happen to Rico here at East Bay. And then the other night, he was 17th, and he was running right there around the top 5, maybe 6th or 7th, and made a really big move on the last corner, tried to slide by Zeb Wise, clipped his front end, flipped into the wall, and he finished in the 17th position. So I'm a little bit worried right now for my prediction sake. I thought Rico was going to win this championship. Still a long ways to go. We got 57 more races, but he's going to have to clean up these mistakes. He's got to realize, hey, I'm running 5th. I don't need to throw a big bomb on Zeb Wise here for 4th and put myself into the wall and end up 17th instead, right? And maybe put himself in a little bit of a bad spot there when he jumped the right rear Zeb Wise earlier in the race and was looking straight down at the racetrack doing a stoppie. Rico, I think he's going to realize after this weekend, hey, I've got to dig down here. I've got to be consistent now. I'm already 9th in points and way behind Brad Sweet. I got to pick it up. So Rico, for me, 9th in the power rankings. Leads me to 8th in the power rankings. And I'm going to put down Parker Price Miller right now, 8th in the power rankings, with finishes of 14th and 6th 2 nights at East Bay. That 6th place run was from 23rd on the starting grid. He was the second to last car in the show from the B main, and he drove almost into the top 5 and was very, very fast. Now, I know there was a lot of wrecks in that race, but he was still passing cars and passing good cars to get up to the front. Parker Price Miller right now 8th in the point standings. Curious to see how he does when it comes to Gold Miles later on this week. Parker Price Miller, I would say he was mediocre here in 14th when he ran that first race, but then in the second feature, he really got going and had a great run. So we'll see where Parker Price Miller ends up after this weekend. I hope that he can continue these good runs. Definitely a good driver to have with the High Limit Racing Series. Excited to see what he can do throughout the rest of the year. So right now, he's 8th in power rankings and 8th in the High Limit Sprint Car Series point standings. Seventh in the power rankings, I've got Spencer Baston, one of just 4 drivers to be in the top 10 for both of the features that were ran over at East Bay. He was 10th and 8th in those 2 nights. The 10th place finish was from the 13th starting position, so he went forward 3 spots. And the 8th, he started back in 4th, so he dropped 4 positions to finish in the 8th position. He is 7th in the point standings right now, 7th on the power rankings. In my opinion, not very flashy, right, those 2 nights. He was just kind of there. He was decent. Not really making a lot of, not making a big splash out there, right? People weren't like, holy cow, look at Spencer Baston go, right? He was just there, 10th and 8th. Still a good start to the season for those guys, 2 top 10s. Only four drivers could say that they did that and accomplished that feat over at East Bay. So a good start for the CJB Motorsports number 5, but I really want to see them being inside the top 5 on a more regular basis for them to move up these power rankings into the top 5. Next on my list, let me just double check here, okay? Zeb Wise. I've got Zeb Wise down for 6th in the power rankings right now. He is also 6th in the point standings. He has 2 finishes of 11th and 4th the first 2 nights out at East Bay. And that 11th place run, I feel like that should have been much better. If you remember back to that race, Zeb Wise was looking the wrong direction on lap number 1 right off the start. He came across the start-finish line. Something happened. He was looking the wrong direction and had to come back through the field to get to that 11th place run. And I want to say in that race, he was the only yellow, or there might have been 1 more caution. So with not very many breaks and not many times to where other cars wrecking out and stuff like that, Zeb Wise was able to drive the Routine Racing car back up to 11th. And then the other night, he was 4th. And at one point in time, he did, move up there and take the lead for a brief moment in that second feature. I think that they were very, very fast. I was pleasantly surprised by the speed out of those guys. 56 cars there, a lot of good competition, and Zeb Wise nearly got a win there over at East Bay. Ended up slipping back to 4th, had that contact with Rico. That might have affected him a little bit, not really sure, but still a solid first weekend for the Routine Racing 26 and driver Zeb Wise. Moving into the top 5 in the power rankings. Sorry about my terrible handwriting, but I've got Tanner Thorson down for 5th in the power rankings. Who would have thought that Tanner Thorson, after 2 races, would be 5th in High Limit Sprint Car Series points right now? Not me. I will tell you that right now. I did not even have Tanner Thorson in the top 10 in points at the end of the year. Still a very long ways to go. I know that. But man, did those guys come out of the gate strong. He ended up 3rd the first race and 11th in the second race. In that first race, he had taken the lead away from Kyle Larson in lap traffic at one point in time, and I thought he was going to get the win. But then later on, getting through traffic, he wasn't quite as aggressive as Larson, and it looked like he was going to run second. Coming across the line, Cole Macedo bounces off the wall around him on the front stretch to end up so that put Thorson back to 3rd. Still a phenomenal run. He did have Lee Lindgren there, the part-time crew chief for that car. He was in the house helping them guys out, and he's going to be there at Gold Miles next week. Now, the big question for me is, I think we kind of knew that Tanner Thorson was going to be good on these smaller-sized racetracks. How does he do at Golden Isles Speedway next week? I think that is the really big telling factor for this team. if he can show speed at the big tracks, if he can run top 10 both nights at Golden Miles, then these guys might be the real deal. A great start to the year for Tanner Thorson. That 11th place run, he got that after transferring in through the B main. I think he won the B main, if I'm not mistaken, and got up to 11th. Obviously, there was a lot of wrecks in that race, but still, a solid run for that team. I'm excited to see what they can do next week at Golden Miles. 4th in the power rankings, I've got Tyler Courtney. Now, you might be thinking, what in the world are you doing putting Tyler Courtney 4th in the power rankings? Well, look at that first race. He was 13th in the feature and showed zero speed, was not a factor at all in the first race. It just looked like they did not have everything dialed in there on that car, especially after being so good at Volusia with the Outlaws. They got a win down there, a bunch of top 5s, and then they come out to 13th place at East Bay after winning the last 2 races there with the All-Stars. It was kind of weird to see, but then obviously they got things back together with the win in the second feature of the night. And to be honest, I don't know if he should have won that race. There was a couple moments when Cory Day, when Zeb Wise, a couple other guys actually got in front of him and took the lead, but the caution flag negated those passes, putting Tyler Courtney back to the top spot. In my opinion, he was not the best car in that second race. I think Cory Day was, but still a good way to bounce back after that first race, finishing in 13th. So Tyler Courtney, 4th in the power rankings and 3rd overall in high limit sprint car series points. Now we got Brent Marks. Brent Marks, 3rd in the power rankings. I mentioned it earlier, Spencer Basin, one of those other drivers that has been in the top 10 both nights so far. Brent Marks joins him in that stat category. Marks was 8th and he was 5th in those 2 races. He currently sits 4th in the point standings, but 3rd in the power rankings. And Marks, he was pretty fast in both races. I would say not, he wasn't just there. We talk about Spencer Basin being top 10 both races. He was just kind of there. Marks had to work for one of these. I want to say it was the second race. He had to come from way in the back and got all the way up to 5th. And the other race, he finished 8th, right? So just 2 decent nights for Brent Marks. He was relatively fast. Nothing flashy or anything like that. But he was there. He's consistent. That's what it takes to get one of these charters this year with high limit. That's what it takes to try and win this championship. You got to be around that 5th place finish every single night of the season. So a solid week for Brent Marks. We'll see what he can do when it comes to Golden Miles Speedway coming up here over the next couple of days. But strong start to the year for those guys. 2nd on the power rankings is Brad Sweet. Now, Brad Sweet currently tied for the championship lead with the High Limit Series, and he has finishes of 3rd and 4th, which might sound really good. 2 top 5s, that's not bad at all for Brad Sweet, and that's kind of what we were expecting from him. But what we weren't expecting from him is to start on the front row of both features and go backwards. How many times does that happen over the last 10 years? Really, I mean, maybe like the last 5 years, really. But Brad Sweet started 1st in the second race, ends up 4th, and started 2nd in the first race and ended up in the 3rd spot. That doesn't happen very often when Brad Sweet goes backwards from the front row. If he starts on the front row, he's either winning or he's finishing 2nd. This right here, I don't know if they were missing something a little bit, or maybe the competition is better. Not better, but maybe it's a little bit tougher than we kind of all thought. I mean, we all thought, Rico and Brad were going to be the 2 guys dominating most of the races, but Brad, I mean, he was just there. He held on. At one point in time in this second race, he started on the pole and was running in 6th. Like, he had lost 5 spots in the middle part of that race, came back to run 4th, but not very often you see Brad Sweet go backwards 2 nights in a row from the front row. And so for those reasons, I put him 2nd in the power rankings, because I think the guy that's 1st was just better. He went forwards in both races, and without a doubt, I've got Cory Day at the top of the power rankings right now. Cory Day, top place position right now in the power rankings and tied for 1st in the point standings with the High Limit Series. He finished 6th and he finished 2nd in the first 2 races of the season. The 6th place run, he started, I want to say 8th or 9th and got up to 6th, and he was mixing it up in the top 5 but ended up right outside of it. And then in the second race, in my opinion, I mentioned it a moment ago, I think he should have won that race. There was a late caution when Anthony Macri ran around with 2 laps to go, and it looked like Cory was going to circle around the outside of Tyler Courtney in turns 3 and 4. Caution flag negated that, and he ended up finishing in 2nd. Definitely looked like the car to beat in that race. And what's most impressive to me is that they were this fast at a racetrack they'd never been to. Remember back to the season preview for Cory Day, the thing that I was talking about the most was he hasn't really traveled that much outside of California to new racetracks, and I was worried that it was going to take him a while to pick up these new tracks and get speed out of them, but he proved me wrong. I know this is the first weekend, might be a completely different story at Golden Isles. He might slip down to 5th in the power rankings. I don't know. But a really, really good week for Cory Day, leading the high limit points. I don't know if many people thought that. I feel like everybody was kind of thinking Brad, Rico, Tyler, Courtney are going to be your top 3 leaving the weekend, but that's just not the case. Cory Day leads the power rankings after week number 1, and we'll be back next week after Golden Isles. We'll do this all over again, and then we have a month off in March, and we come back and really get going in the schedule. A lot of races in the month of April, and these power rankings will be shifting around quite a bit. So if you don't see your favorite driver up there, they are still being accounted for. We've got them ranked down here 11th through 17th. We'll see if they can jump up there into the top 10 later on this year. But that's all we've got. We'll come back here tomorrow and preview the weekend at Golden Isles Speedway in Georgia. The series will be racing on Thursday and on Saturday as a combined race with the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series. Should be a fun weekend over there. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to leave a like on the video, leave a subscription on the video, hit that notification bell. I never thought I'd be saying these things, honestly, but I think it does help trying to get the word out there a little bit and grow the channel. So appreciate you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow for the race preview for Golden Isles Speedway. Thank you.